Are you frustrated because you're having longer menstrual cycles? Keep watching. Hey, we are talking about the most major causes of having a longer menstrual cycle. And I've been there, I know what that feels like, and it's the worst. I want to preface that when I say long menstrual cycle, I mean a long menstrual cycle is from day 1 of bleeding all the way until the day before you start bleeding again. That is the cycle. I'm not talking about the length of bleeding. Some women often get confused that when I say a long menstrual cycle, they think that they're bleeding for a longer period of time. No, everything from, of course, bleeding, but all the other stuff too. So that is what I mean by a long menstrual cycle. Now, I personally love having periods because I find that it's a really cool natural report card of what's going on inside of our body. And so before we get to the causes of a long menstrual cycle, let's back up so you can understand some menstrual cycle basics, because this will be important to know. So the first half of your cycle is called the follicular phase. The follicular phase is day 1 all the way into ovulation. And day 1 is the day you start bleeding. And the reason for the follicular cycle is that it's there to grow and mature an egg to be released for ovulation, because that ovulations should be right there in the middle of your cycle. And the increasing estrogen that happens in the first phase of your cycle is so important for growing your uterine lining. Because remember, technically our periods are meant to make a baby. And when we bleed, that means we obviously don't have a baby. So that is follicular phase. Next phase is luteal phase. This is ovulation all the way until the day before you start bleeding. And the whole purpose for the luteal phase, or I guess I should say the major points, is that it's there to help implant the fertilized egg, increase that uterine lining, and if pregnancy does not occur, both hormones, estrogen and progesterone, drop and the uterine lining is shed. Hence bleeding. So I will put in the description a link to our notes about this, because we also include a graph, which is really helpful if you're a visual person to see what the cycle actually looks like. So now that you know the basics, now we can go into what happens in a longer cycle, because usually when a woman has a longer cycle is because that follicular phase, that first phase, is longer than the last half. So we're basically delaying ovulation a little bit. So why does your body feel that delaying ovulation is a good idea? And this is where we start to unpack the reasons why, common causes of longer follicular phases. So the number 1 is stress. I think we all know that. I think we've all even possibly felt that in a very stressful period of time, whether that's externally of family, work, all those things, or even internal stress, maybe a time where you were really, really sick. If you notice that you were probably late on your period, that's why. It can also not just stem from physical, but mental, emotional stress as well can tell your body, hey, let's wait to ovulate. It's not a good time to get pregnant right now. The other reason is a thyroid issue. So thyroid levels really affect ovulation. So if you struggle with hyperthyroid or hypothyroid, this can definitely create longer menstrual cycles. PCOS is another reason, and this is because the large amounts of testosterone found in PCOS women can inhibit ovulation. Breastfeeding, of course, causes, especially postpartum, it's normal to have weird cycles as you get back to your cycle. So here, what causes longer, a little bit more wacky, is because you have a hormone, prolactin, that is there influencing sex hormone production and your whole cycle. Under eating is a huge one here, because remember, we have to go back to, why does my body think this is a good idea to withhold ovulation? And if your body thinks that there is a possible starvation and famine going on, and there's not enough calories and food, because food is fuel, remember, there's not enough food to just do your normal bodily functions, like beating your heart and your lungs breathing and your muscles moving, even just like from walking. All of that takes energy. And if you're chronically under eating, all this can definitely tell your brain, hey, there's no ovulation is going to happen here. It's not safe out in this environment. And you guys, ladies, and I know if you're watching this, you're a reproducing woman and you're not a toddler. If you're eating less than 1,500 calories, you need to reassess, because this is not okay. To keep it into, or I guess to give you a good comparison, a toddler should be eating like 1,200 calories. So you are a grown woman and need to be eating more. We have other videos on our channel about under eating. So the other thing is over exercising, because this can definitely become a stressor for the body. What I see too is women combine under eating and over exercising, and then that creates like a double whammy. Understand that your body is probably just listening to what it's being told from your environment and from internal things. That's why you're having longer cycles. Also, certain deficiencies have been tied to having longer cycles, like vitamin D. And I will tell you, there has not been one person that has walked into our practice that has not been vitamin D deficient, or having optimal levels of vitamin D, I should say. So if you are wanting to stop DIYing and really figure out why you're having these long menstrual cycles, working with a practitioner, our team of nutritionists and dietitians are incredible, because we specialize in using food as fuel and lifestyle changes to really support hormone balance. And it's incredible to see what the changes that can be made, and they're simple, and what that can do for your hormones. Another question that we get a lot is, do you bleed if you don't ovulate? And yes, you can definitely still bleed if you don't ovulate. And this is where your cycle becomes so long that your uterine linings just builds, gets really heavy, and then it will trigger bleeding. So it's definitely important to note that if you're still bleeding, that doesn't mean you technically ovulated. Most of the time it does, but could also be just from a really heavy uterine lining, because you're having long cycles. Now, I want to say that, birth control is often given to women who have irregular cycles, and I want to let you know that birth control does not fix or solve the problem. Yes, it can fix, in the sense, a little bit of symptoms, but the bigger question you need to ask yourself is, what if I got off birth control? What would happen? You would go back to the way it was. Hence why it doesn't actually solve the problem. It's really only a Band-Aid. So this is a common solution, and it shouldn't be. I think there's so much more to the story than that. So with labs, if you're curious on what you should do, how do you get to know your cycle, we do Dutch urine testing that shows not only your hormone levels, but also how you metabolize the hormone. And it's combined with adrenal testing too, which tests your stress hormone. And I feel like this is such a huge part of our overall hormonal health that looking at both are really important. Now, another thing to look for before you jump into sex hormone testing, because I will say, you guys, sex hormones are like one of the last dominoes to fall. There's so many things that come before it: blood sugar, thyroid, etc. So if you haven't gotten a comprehensive thyroid or blood sugar panel from your doctor, that's also something that you can look for too, because you have to answer the question, why does my body think that this is a good idea to delay ovulation and cause a long menstrual cycle? So we'd be happy to help you. We do the Dutch, and it is a test that you can do right away if we really need to. And using those results, we can look at getting your body back to good regular cycles where you can actually depend and know when your next cycle is coming. So use the link up here and book a free discovery call with our team of nutritionists and dietitians to help you feeling your best self.